All right, we're back with another edition of Talking Preps. Today, we've got my man Will Healy on the show from the Charlotte 49ers. I'm excited about this one. Coach, I've never met you. Welcome to the show. Amazing what you're doing over in Charlotte.
Well, I appreciate you having me. You're not missing out on anything, I can promise you. So y'all must have run out of guests, but I'm glad to be on with y'all.
No, sir. No, sir. Okay, so I was looking at your bio. All-state prep quarterback in Tennessee. Went to Richmond, won a national championship. Correct?
I was on the team at Richmond.
On the team.
Yeah.
And then you go to Austin Peay and you take over a team that was after your first year, they were 1-34. So that kind of leads me to my first question. You know, you're one of the youngest coaches in Division I. Are you surprised it's gone so quickly, so fast, and so successfully?
I feel like going over for your first 13 as a head coach, nothing moves quick, you know. So it moved quickly the second year. Man, I tell you what, I think they'd won one game in the first 35 when I got there, and then I went 0 for my first 13. So I didn't help the cause any. But year 2 was really special, and year 3 was solid, not great. You know, definitely thought I had some unfinished business. Was fortunate enough to hire some really good coaches when I was at Austin Peay, and able to get the Charlotte job last year, and have had a blast in Charlotte.
Okay, the question I gotta ask, I see the videos on Twitter, and I would get on them last year watching them. Club Lit, where did Club Lit come from, and who is it that convinced you to take your shirt off and really get in there with those guys? That looks so fun to me. Club Lit.
Well, I mean, there's another 20 pounds since COVID-19 that's been put on. I've been working really hard on with this dad bod, but year 1 at Austin Peay, you know, you go 0-11. Year 2, start off, we get beat by Cincinnati. And had a shot to win the game. And then the next week we go play at Miami of Ohio and have no juice. You know, guys aren't really interested in playing, and had a great week of preparation, great week of practice. And so I asked the leadership committee, I said, you know, we had a great week. You know, Monday through Friday, y'all look like world beaters, and Saturday we look disinterested. How would we miss an opportunity to play the game of football like we did today? And one of the 6-year seniors who had won one game in 6 years, Max Ewalt, said to me, Coach, Monday through Fridays have been our way of hiding. You know, Saturdays we've gotten our butt kicked around here for a long time. So Saturdays have not been a whole lot of fun. And the following week we were playing Morehead State. We had a 29-game losing streak, had lost 45 out of our last 46 games. And I said, when we win on Saturday, we're going to have more fun playing college football than anybody in the country. So we end up winning the game. We tear down the goalpost. We smoke cigars in the locker room. And I started, you know, just a celebrating success, you know, post-game win celebration. I'd waited 14 games in a year and a half to make it happen. But we definitely made it count. Our boosters were getting off the elevator, like, not being able to breathe because there was so much smoke in the hallway. I could hardly speak, you know, with my post-game speech because there was so much cigar smoke going in my face. So fast forward 4 or 5 games, we've now won, you know, 5 out of the last 6. And we were playing Southeast Missouri. We were up like 31-7 going into the fourth quarter. They end up coming back, make it a really close game. And when we won 38-31, and you could feel a really dejected sideline. And I got on the headset and I told our staff, I said, if any of you don't walk in this locker room and act like we just won the Super Bowl, then you're all fired. Because 5 weeks ago, we would have paid for a win. And so let's don't forget that. So that's when, you know, I introduced my body to the world. And then Club Lit was a spinoff of, we created Charlotte whenever we were here, when we first got here. And now we've turned our locker room into a club with a DJ, and you know, my wife just loves it so much when she can see me on TV with my shirt off. I thought I'd give her what she wanted.
Hey, Coach Healy, I appreciate you being on here with us. It's great having you here in the Charlotte community. I saw that you took part in a Black Lives Matters march this past Saturday near the school. I just wanted to get what your thoughts are about the recent movements with race relations in general.
Well, it's heartbreaking. I mean, you know, there's a lot of you that says there's no way this can really be happening. You know, really from an injustice perspective. And I think my number one job whenever it first came up was to listen. You know, here's who I am. All right. I'm a 35-year-old white guy from Ottawa, Tennessee, grew up on the lake, went to a private high school, went to a private university in the University of Richmond. To act like I've been a minority in a lot of the situations I've been in is dead wrong. The only time I've been a minority and had opportunities to really develop relationships with Black people or Hispanic people has been through athletics. And so first off, let me just be the first one to say, I don't have it figured out. I don't understand. I tell our guys that I don't understand, but here's what I do understand. I understand perceptions. I understand that I'm a white coach coaching a lot of Black players, and it looks bad when you're making money and they're not. Right. And it looks bad when you've had a white coach in your past that maybe just cared about you if you're playing really good football or wasn't near as consistent. Or so we judge an entire group of people based on the actions of one. Right. I mean, sound familiar? You know, one football player at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, gets arrested, and the headline is Charlotte football player gets arrested. So our whole football team is judged by the actions of one. To me, I'm not a historian, and I don't have all the facts, but I think racism exists because of extremes. And I think that what's going on now in large part is due to the actions of few, right? And so I think it's just really important that our players understand that I am working at understanding them, that I have their back, that I want them to have a voice, that I want to create a safe net of a place where they can tell me how they really feel. I want to educate them, and I want them to educate me about their experiences and what I can do to help this. And I don't think it's, we went to a march. I took my 5-year-old and my wife. Awesome. Incredible. I was, such an amazing experience for me. But that's not it. I mean, that's not check it off the list, move on to the next thing. This is not something that's going away. And this is not something that just happens. So, our team meetings have a lot to do with it. I'm growing every single team meeting we have. When I listen to the stories of our players, it breaks my heart when they don't feel safe or feel like somebody doesn't respect them, because we've got a really, really good group of players and we got a really good group of coaches. And I've just been blessed enough to see the best of the best and see the really good sides to all races. And that's what I'm fortunate to be able to do.
And I really appreciate that stance. And, like you, I can't put myself in an African-American shoes, whether Langston or Gary or anyone, we don't have those same feelings, but we can just be caring and compassionate and understand and just try to do the best we can to understand. So I appreciate that stance. My second question I wanted to talk about, though, given your age, you're not very far ahead in years, more than some of the players that you've coached. Being that you're younger, do you think that gives you an advantage in the recruiting and being able to connect with some of the players and just in understanding a generation maybe better than a coach that's 65, 66 years old?
Well, I think what's unique right now about college football is that everybody's answering questions that people may have. So, Mac Brown right now at North Carolina is asking a question, answering questions about, does he still have enough juice? He's got a lot of juice, and he's proven the fact, I don't care what age you are, he can do it with the best of them. And he's done a tremendous job. Obviously, Dabo's got his way of doing things, and Dave Clausen's got his way of doing things. Cutcliffe's got his way of doing things. So there's a relatability factor, if that's a word, that I think that you automatically have when you walk in the door and you look 12 years old. It wasn't that long ago whenever I was in their shoes. What I've got to answer every time I walk into a house and every time I have a recruit on campus is, how does this 12-year-old going to help my son become a grown man by the time he leaves? And so I think there's got to be it's not always roses here. This is what our culture looks like. These are the standards and the expectations that I expect you to meet. And if this is what you're looking for, this will be a great spot. But I'm not going to sell you that, this is Disney World every single time you step in our office. There's hard work. We're going to work really hard. We're going to play really hard. I'm going to, demand that we're in what I call the most accessible program in the United States of America. So how you represent our program is extremely important to me. The perception that people have of the people in our building is extremely important to me. So, yes, I definitely think it helps you relate. I've got to answer the other question, and that is I'm mature enough and I care enough about your son to help him reach his aspirations.
You do a phenomenal job of relating with student athletes, Coach Healy. Thanks for being on our show. One of the best things that I've seen Charlotte football do recently, of being a coach in the last 10 years in Charlotte, there was a disconnect from the Charlotte staff before. We would think we would see you the most in our schools, at least once a week, the assistant coaches building relationships, and it wasn't quite there. When you took over the regime, it was full-fledged, like building relationships, hitting the fast forward button. I really appreciate what you've done, and it's going to pay dividends for you in the future. The one question I have for you, though, on a lighter note, is we saw the attendance rate at UNCC. A lot more women come to the football games than men now, and I think it's maybe based because you are 35.
Well, my wife's going to be mad at you for asking that question. She'll be the first one to tell you. She'd probably tell you can have them. But I appreciate what you said, Coach. And, I think that one of the things about taking this job for me is that you're in a city that didn't necessarily appreciate the product that was going on up the street. And that there's a really good brand of football, that it's big time football, and that we would have opportunities to win games. It's going to be a really good experience for you. I say the same thing from a recruiting perspective. I thought the last staff did a tremendous job, and I'm not saying anything about what they've done. I was very fortunate to be able to win with their players a year ago. I thought the relationships, especially with high school coaches and prospects, could be improved upon like it could anywhere else in the country. It's our number one priority in recruiting. What I've done is I've given, 10 coaches, 8 schools, and 6 surrounding counties. And our job is to make sure that we communicate with the staffs for 52 weeks a year, that we are accessible, that you do hear from us more than anybody else, that we develop relationships, and that you trust us, and again, to say we have it figured out, I'd be lying to you, but I think we can figure it out together. And we may not like, where each other is on a prospect, or you may disagree with me about, I think you should take this guy, but we're going to be honest. We're going to be upfront. We're going to be consistent, and we're going to be accessible. And we've gotten great response from high school coaches like yourself. And I appreciate that as much as anything, because it's been easy, because there's really good people in this area and really good prospects.
Coach, you mentioned earlier some of the other programs in the state. North Carolina has 7 Division I programs. How do you distinguish your program from the other 6 programs in the state?
Well, I think you got great programs and you got great coaches. You go from top to bottom, and you're talking about, guys who have done so much more than I've even thought about doing. You go, you're talking App, which is, Sean Clark, I think, will do a tremendous job there. The history of that program, I've played them since I was at the University of Richmond in 2007, when the year they beat Michigan, and then played them when I was in the Southern Conference at Chattanooga, and played them again last year, and they kicked our butt last year. East Carolina, I've got so much respect for Mike Houston. I know his career record. I think you would, if we talked wins and losses, I don't even know if he's lost as many games in his career as I have in 4 years. So obviously he's a really good one. You got Cutcliffe, who's a Hall of Famer. You got Mac Brown, who's a Hall of Famer. You got Clausen, who coached me for 4 years at the University of Richmond. And then you got Dorian at North Carolina State that has won a tremendous amount. So I do think we're all different, and in a good way. I don't think that there's a cookie cutter way of getting the thing done. I think that we've got the second youngest staff in the United States. We believe in celebrating success. We believe in relationships. We are in an unbelievable city. I think one of the best cities in the country. We've got, an amazing university that is the highest growing university in the state of North Carolina right now. And we got really good facilities. I think it's a different experience. You're talking about a program that's got 7 years of history versus programs with 100 years of experience. You're talking about a program that's been to one bowl game versus some programs who have been to a ton. So there's got to be a different chip on your shoulder, a different experience that you're looking for, and you want to build something. And I've always felt like, there's a lot of fun in building.
Also, Coach, the Charlotte metropolitan area has become a hotbed of high school football. How do you keep some of these kids at home? Matt Brown once talked about building a fence around North Carolina. How do you build a fence around the Charlotte area?
Well, I think it starts with relationships in the community, and for us, it starts with high school coaches. Again, the number of times that you're going to sign a 4 or 5-star from Charlotte, your odds aren't very good. I think maybe there's one, maybe there is an Ed Oliver at some point in time that decides to stay and be a program changer. But I think the biggest thing about it is your 4 and 5 stars need to understand the product. They need to think playing football at Charlotte is cool. And then even if they do decide to go to another one of those state schools or Clemson or South Carolina or Alabama or wherever it may be, they still always appreciated what they had in their hometown, and they start to kind of love what's going on in their hometown school. So maybe one day they're not happy. Maybe they come back. Maybe they have a buddy that's a 3-star instead of a 4-star, and they're able to say, yeah, Charlotte is cool, man. That'd be really cool if you stayed and played there. So it's recruiting all, 0 stars to 5 stars. It's recruiting high school coaches. And then again, it's putting a product on the field that when you do have those guys on campus, when they do have an opportunity to develop a relationship with your staff, that they feel the difference too, and that they can help you continue to create and continue to build. And then you string some wins together, and that obviously helps.
Coach Healy, I want to go back to one thing Gary had mentioned, and you had kind of touched on. You mentioned the other Division I programs that already have that tradition. You got Carolina and Duke and Wake Forest. All of them have done big things. But to get there, and it took a long time for them to build those programs. But in order to have an enormous program like that, you've got to have big rivalry games. You got to have those games that that you can hang your hat on playing. That's going to not only bring in a big crowd, but it's going to generate a lot of excitement, a lot of buzz surrounding the program. I've been around a long time, and I remember with UNC Charlotte about 20 years ago in basketball, they had a huge rivalry with Cincinnati, and it was just the big thing. You waited for those games to come year in and year out. Who would you like to be the big rivalry games that you would like to establish those rivalries with, that you think could really carry on the football program?
Well, we're not on the level of the guys that I even just talked about. I mean, I think one winning season in the history of the program doesn't put you in the same shoes as some of those other guys. But I do think that we need to create some games that our fans are interested in. Obviously, App and ECU make a ton of sense. We're starting home and homes next year. This coming season, we'll play Duke, and then Duke will come to us in 21. North Carolina will come to us in 25, I believe. We're working on a Wake Forest game, if that's a possibility. I don't know if that's going to work out or not, but I mean, there's a lot of in-state games we would love to play. And obviously we know how far we have to go. It's not like just because we had one winning season, we can hop on the map and beat those guys in recruiting or beat them on the field or whatever it may be. I mean, playing Duke this year, David Cutcliffe calling plays again, playing at their place will be a real challenge for us. And so it's fun that we can create those games of interest. You hope that you beat some people a couple more times, and then it does become a rivalry. I mean, I used to talk about it at Austin Peay all the time. Our big rivalry was Murray, and we'd beaten them one time in 12 years. Well, it may have been a rivalry for you. It wasn't a rivalry for them. So we got to beat some people a little bit more. And find a way to beat an app every once in a while, and find a way to beat ECU when we play them, and find a way to win some more of these conference games. Beat an Old Dominion, beat a Middle Tennessee, a Western Kentucky, some of those guys, and do it consistently. And I think then maybe you won't have as many people like us. Everybody wants to schedule us for homecoming right now, so we want to change that.
Well, I was part of the coaching staff at South Rowan, and our biggest game was Kannapolis. And, that was our big rivalry. We only managed to beat them a handful of times, but it was a lot bigger to us than it was to them. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Speaking of Austin Peay, Coach, you took Austin Peay from 0-11 in 2016 to 8-4 the following season, from 9th place to 2nd. Here at Charlotte, you were 7-6 in year one. What in the world can we expect for the 49ers next year? Because I think the expectations have to be through the roof just based off everything that I'm hearing from you tonight.
Well, you can expect us to play football. I think that's step one right now. I do feel really good about where that's heading. I think that here's the problem. All right, you go. You start off 2-5. All right, you win 5 in a row to get to 7-5, and you have a miraculous end of the season. You make your first bowl game, and then you get your butt kicked in the bowl game by Buffalo, who was an unbelievable team and wore us out. So you hope that the expectations go from 5-3 in the conference and having to go on a 5-game win streak just to make a bowl game to, at some point in time, I'd love to have realistic conversations about winning the conference championship and winning bowl games. And we're not there. We're not one good year is great, but programs are built over years and consistency winning. So I think we'll have better depth. I think we've added some really, really good players. I mean, we had a top 70 class nationally in recruiting. Signed a really, really good recruiting class. We've taken some great grad transfers, that I think will be able to fill some holes. But the reality is you're losing the all-time leading tackler. You're using a back-to-back 1,000-yard rusher who's playing for the Cleveland Browns. You're losing a 4th-round offensive tackle to the New York Jets and Cam Clark, and you're losing the guy who had 14 sacks a year ago and was an AP All-American. Not to mention some other really, really good players that had extreme productivity. So it will be more replaced by committee. But I think everybody in our program understands how fortunate we were to win some of the games we won down the stretch. Our schedule is very difficult. Tennessee, Norfolk State, Duke, Georgia State out of conference, and then a loaded conference schedule. So it'll be difficult, but I'm excited about the progress we've made from year one to year two.
Coach, to kind of continue with that, you've had you're young, but you've had a very good career and a lot of success. And we would like to know, what do you think your keys are? What are your keys to have driven your success?
There is no question about it that I've hired really good people, and I won't take credit for much, but that's where we've won. And I was at Austin Peay. They, it was a 256 ranked job out of 256 Division I jobs, and I found the one AD in the United States of America who was probably ignorant enough to give me a chance, and Ryan Ivey, and I mean that sarcastically because I think he's amazing. And he gave me a shot. I remember sitting in his office and I was like, listen, I don't want to tell you how to do your job, but if there's ever a time to take a chance, it's when you've won one game out of your last 36. Like, really, what's the risk reward right here? If this thing works, it'll be, if we win 2 games in the next 4 years, they'll build a statue of all of us around this place. So, I was fortunate to be able to get the job there, and then really fortunate that Ryan Ivey would allow me to hire who I hired. Marcus West is our co-defensive coordinator here. Unbelievable what he did for me at Austin Peay. We started off at 10 full-time coaches and a director of football operations for a little less than $300,000, which was difficult. And we were able to raise some money and get some of those guys in, to hire a great staff. And I've always said my goal is that somebody takes a picture of your staff and they say, how in the world did he get those people to Austin Peay? how in the world was that staff together at Austin P? And I think we had that. Guys who had my back when I made, and still do make dumb decisions and don't have it figured out and am looking for answers. Friends who it hurts them when you fail. Best advice I ever got was from Mike London, who had just gotten fired as the head coach at the University of Virginia. He said, hire people who won't let you fail. And that's what I did. And that's how our message and our culture and our process stays consistent, is because I've got a great group of people around me.
So you've generated a lot of a lot of excitement here in the Charlotte area, and rather successful last season. And if things keep going well, other colleges are going to come talking to you. We'd like to know, can you tell us that you'll be here in a few years?
Well, I think the crazy thing about this profession is they could get sick and tired of me in a few years too, and you can get fired. So you have no idea what tomorrow's going to hold. I do think it's awesome to be in a place that your family is extremely happy, that that the vision of the program matches what you want it to be, from a chancellor perspective and an AD perspective down to what I believe is a first-class university. My goal for Charlotte is that Charlotte becomes the big-time program. I don't want to go take another job. I want Charlotte to become that big job. And, I think that my biggest thing about it always is, how do I take care of a staff? It's not about, from that my ego needs it. It's just, I love having opportunities to be able to take care of those people that are around me. And I think we can continue to grow that at our place as we grow fundraising and as we grow attendance and as we grow support. So the great part about it for me is I don't have to look. I love where I am. I love what we're building. I know that crazy once in a lifetime type opportunities pop open. And I'm very honest with our players about it when it does, but it's not something that I'm just trying to find the next one. I'm happy where I am, and I hope that they'll have me.
I think that's a phenomenal way what you put about your coaching staff a little bit ago, just putting people behind you that support you and will not let you fail. I'm doing the exact same thing right now. Very excited about the future. You just hired a guy named Lee Grimes. He's a good friend of mine that I know very well. Are you excited about him coaching your offensive line? And the second question is, don't sugarcoat this. I want to know the truth. I want to know your ace in the hole. If you got to get a recruit, who's your ace in the hole coach you can go get him? Who's your best recruiter?
Two great questions. The best recruiter on our staff is my wife. And she, I really do think that I'll answer the first question first. I think we've got a staff full of really good guys that it depends on. Let's say if I'm recruiting a guy to Mississippi, I'm probably putting Marcus West there. If I'm recruiting an offensive lineman, I feel really good about putting Lee there. Guy from Texas, Lee there. Eddie Hick. I've got some really, really good recruiters that can relate and develop relationships. So I don't feel like it's the typical staff that just may have one or two. I really do feel like it's so much based on where they are, what position they play, what they're looking for. And I've got a really good group. And then I think once that happens, their families being able to see our families interact is extremely important. Your first question again was Lee Grimes. I didn't know Lee from Adam. I'd heard about Lee. I was really close to hiring another candidate, and got a phone call from Lee. Our offensive coordinator, Mark Carney, got on the phone with him. And to be honest with you, was kind of hoping Mark Carney would call me and say, yeah, I think we're good where we are. We just need to move on. And he called me and was like, we don't have a choice. We got to bring this guy on campus. And when we did, it was incredible. He blew us out of the water. I think about how fortunate we are to be able to have him. He just signed a 4-star offensive lineman out of Texas. So I'm pretty high on his game right now. He's consistent. He's a great coach. Our players have loved him. And it was a difficult position for him to take over. Alex Atkins and I had worked together for a long time. Those players loved him. Alex was the offensive coordinator. So it was a difficult spot for him to walk into, and Lee's been a champ. He's been fantastic. Very, very happy to have him.
Yes, Coach. Everybody's starting to get excited about the football season coming up. Football magazines are in the newsstands and at the grocery stores. And the NBA has announced that they're coming back, and other leagues are starting to come back. How is that going to work at UNCC? How is that transition coming back from the disease? And do you think we'll have fans in the stands?
So we are back in the office. June the 1st, we were able to go back in. We're on less than 50% capacity in the office. We are all having COVID testing done, whether that be staff, admin, or players. All of us are doing that. And then our guys will start coming back on campus with testing next week. We'll quarantine them until we get the results back. We'll have 10 or less outside, and will not be in the facilities. We'll be working out outside, conditioning outside, lifting weights outside. So we're going to keep them out of the building and go through some protocol with how we clean it and make sure that we're in good shape for when they do. Hopefully, 1st of July, we'll be able to work them out in the weight room. But our biggest thing is play it slow, make sure we've got a really good plan in place. Really how you're going to handle it. I mean, it's probably not if, it's probably when you have a guy who has it. The teams that are testing right now are having guys who test positive for it. A lot of them may be asymptomatic, but they've still got some positive tests. So what's the protocol there? What's the protocol if a coach gets it? How do we clean our lifting, our weight room gear? And so I think we got a really good plan in place, and we've been slow and steady about it and made sure that the player and the coach health is the number one priority.
All right. Well, Coach Healy, man, I really appreciate you coming on. Enjoyed the talk. I was so happy to hear how Club Lit really got started. I've been wanting to hear that out of your mouth. And you got to promise you're going to come back now.
I'd love it. Anytime y'all invite me back, I'll be back.
All right. I got one quick question.
Yeah.
In Austin Peay, you went from 9th place to 2nd place in one season. What in the world is Charlotte going to be like after 7-6, first bowl game ever? What's it going to be like in Charlotte this year in 2020? We were in the conference championship this year.
Just come watch, and we'll make sure you get chances. Right? I know that I'm okay with expectations. I know how hard it is to get there, and we want to create some rivalries. That's our goal. We're going to make some people not like us anymore.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, look, thanks for coming on the show. We're definitely going to come back to you during the season.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
All right, man. Take care. Yeah. Well, there you go. That's Will Healy of UNC Charlotte. Really cool guy. Coach Griner, what do you think?
Dude, he's phenomenal. I don't know how Charlotte's going to keep him. I hope they do, because Charlotte needs football. It's going to make the city even better than what it is now. But, man, he's phenomenal, isn't he? He can speak. I mean, he's kind of like a Dabo Sweeney in a way, but he has his own clever ways of doing things. He's awesome.
Yeah. I'm going to sneak a young lady up here in the corner who has her mic off. And we got to get Q's mic. Yes, she is. But Dale, you did ask the question about whether or not we're going to keep him around. Are you a little nervous that Charlotte's going to have him in a couple of years?
When you're winning like that, you're young and you're winning.
Looking like Tom Cruise?
Yeah, you're looking like Tom Cruise and generate that kind of excitement. It's going to be hard to keep him.
Yeah. Well, we got Miss Tucker of the association. I sent her a text last minute and said, would you please come on and be on the show with us? She was so kind to do so. Q, Tucker, how are you?
Doing great, guys. Thank you for that last minute invitation. Should I feel bad that I'm a last minute?
No, man.
Somebody say no to you.
We didn't know that the big news was coming out today. We would have hit you last week because we knew you dropped the big news. But I mean, kind of tell everybody what you guys announced today and what that's going to mean for the state of North Carolina.
Okay, sure thing. Our board of directors met last Friday morning by way of Zoom to review information that we had received from our Sports Medicine Advisory Committee, review again the Department of Health and Human Services, the North Carolina Department, to review their information. And after reviewing that, we had put together a plan so that the board could review that and then make a determination as to what to do once we got to, or once we, hit June 15th on the calendar. And after reviewing the plan that we had given them, they made the determination to lift the dead period, which we're currently in, and it will remain in effect until June 15th. But then once that date comes, then we have a phased approach for getting back into athletic activity in our member schools. And so the board approved that, along with some forms that will be necessary for players to complete and hand in advance. And then obviously a form where they will have to go through monitoring daily checks on those temperature and any symptoms that would be related to COVID-19, to just make sure that the young people, as they come in, they do not have any of those symptoms. So we released that this morning to the membership. And to be honest with you, Langston, I'm surprised I didn't get any more phone calls than I did. Now, tomorrow's a new day. Some people may not have realized that it was out there and just needed the rest of the day to digest it. But anyway, that's the news.
Well, when we talked this morning, one of the things I asked you was the mom and daddy question. I did get that today. Union County starting July 6th. Mecklenburg County starting July 6th. Wake County starting July 6th. Iredale schools are starting on the 15th. So they're saying, but they have an advantage on us. They get to start early. You gave me a really perceptive answer earlier today about how starting early is kind of a perception, not necessarily reality. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, yes. Our rules and regulation for ending a school year obviously already has that built in, really. Once a school year ends, then and ready to move into the summertime, it basically is at the discretion of that school system to allow schools and the students to move into summer work. They have 7-on-7s. They can start going to camps, hold their own camps. And so, for example, if I'll pick a county up in the mountains. Let's say Swain County schools finish their spring semester May 28th. Well, then after their teacher work days, those mandatory teacher work days are completed, then Swain County can go ahead and start their summer work. Well, let's say Currituck County, they go until June 10th. Well, those young people don't get to start until their school year ends. So it's already in place that not every school system starts summer workouts at the same time. And obviously we would have loved for everybody to be starting from the same point. But again, that's typically not reality anyway. So, we've laid it out there, and it is obviously local control, guys, as to how a school system wants to operate, when they want to allow their students to begin workouts, et cetera.
So, Q, a lot of coaches want to get their kids going now, obviously. Could you explain the phase process a little bit for us?
Well, the phase one is the NCHSAA phase one. And what we've put in place are, obviously the W's that we hear Governor Cooper and Dr. Mandy Cohen talk about all the time, that they have to wear a face mask when they are coming onto campus. Anytime they're not involved in activity, if at all possible, they ought to have a face mask on. The W that says wait, or to maintain that 6 feet of distancing. And then the other W is to wash your hands as often as you can, 20 seconds. And if that is impossible, then we are asking our schools to have the hand sanitizer available so that they would be able to wash their hands as they move from one station to another, whatever the case may be. And so that's the phase one. All of those pieces will be in place. And then really for this first phase, a lot of the emphasis is on conditioning, skill development individually, lifting if they're able to get their weight equipment outside of the weight room. The weight rooms are closed. The locker room is closed. Mat rooms are closed. But anything that can be done outside and they can move it out there, and in those situations, you want to have a 12 feet distance, just simply because when you're lifting weights, you need spotters. And so you want to allow that room, enough room for the spotters to be in place. So that's the first phase. It's about, as you said, getting these young people back and at least having an opportunity, knowing that the numbers are reduced now. If they're inside, a coach can only be in that gym with 10 total people. And that would be the head coach plus an assistant, head coach plus a manager, and then the players. If you're outside on the football field or you're outside on the soccer field, it's 25, but it's all inclusive. So you have to count the adults along with the players. And as I said, those W's have to be observed during this first phase.
Q, one thing that kind of resonated with me when I was listening to Coach Healy from UNC Charlotte talk, and it's also a conversation that we've had collectively on this show. I know Dale and I have discussed it. What happens when through the testing you have a student athlete who turns up positive for COVID-19? They may be asymptomatic. They may not show the symptoms, but how do you think that will be handled from your standpoint, and what do you think the reaction would be? Because I know as a parent, I'm worried that parents may just pull the plug and pull their students or their children away from a sport altogether. How do you see it? Because I think it's inevitable that someone is going to turn up positive. I just want to understand maybe from your point how that would be handled.
Well, obviously, we would hope that anybody who, let's say, wakes up and they're getting ready to go to practice, maybe the wise thing to do if parents and if they have a thermometer at home is check their temperature before they leave home. Now, we know that the fever is only one indicator, but then, once they get to school, then they will have to go to a station and they will have to answer all the questions that, how do you feel today? Do you have any aches and chills? How about a sore throat? Have you had a cough? Have you been around anybody with COVID-19? All of those questions. Now, if someone becomes ill at the workout, then immediately that student would need to be put into an isolation area. The parents would need to be called. And then, of course, they would need to contact their doctor, healthcare provider, whomever. And then one of the things that we've said in the plan is that they ought to work in pods. And so that pods gives you an opportunity that if you're in a group of, let's say, 3 people, I'm in there and 2 of my teammates are in with me. And those are the only 2 people that I really have interacted with on a closer basis, let's say. Obviously, the 6 feet distancing is supposed to be observed. But then we would want to would ask the schools to let those parents know. And then they probably, now that we have more testing going on, Chris, we would hope that maybe those students would go and have the test done. But then obviously you've got to depend on your healthcare professionals to help know how long do we need to stay in since we're not showing any symptoms, for example, the student, if they test positive, those kinds of things. But you're right. It's inevitable that someone is probably going to contract COVID-19. We hope that it doesn't happen. But, injuries and illnesses are really, it's just it's inherent if you're going to participate in athletics. If you participate in athletics in late December, January, there's a likelihood that you may get the flu from somebody else. There's a likelihood that if, heaven forbid, but we have those situations. I don't know if you guys remember some years ago, I think Charlie Adams was still alive then. We had the measles outbreak and it infected a wrestling team. So you have those situations that do pop up and you just deal with them at that time, knowing that everything has been done to try to prevent it. And that's really all we can do.
Good evening, Q.
Hey, Gary.
Inevitably, budgets are going to be affected by this COVID-19, school system budgets, and it'll probably be passed on down to each school as well as the athletic departments. How does that affect endowment games this season?
Well, first of all, let's just hope we have the opportunity to even worry about endowment games. We want to be able to play.
Right.
And obviously a lot has to happen between now and when we actually could play a game. But what we hope is if let's just give an example. Let's say we start on time. Let's say we're able to start August 1. Let's say that for whatever reason, football can start and we play that game and their first game is an endowment game. Well, really and truly at that point, there really would be no change. The endowment is the endowment, and the idea is that 25% of all endowment games come right off the top. It goes into the endowment that the association keeps, and then those are the dollars that we give back to the schools. And I can tell you guys right now that our hope is, unless something really happens between now and June 30th, we think we're positioned to still be able to give our teams a check. And it may not be as large as it has been in some, in years past, but we're still hopeful that we can give a check. So if that's the case, then the endowment dollars or that endowment game would still be played, and we would still take the monies and invest it just like we always have. Now, if for whatever reason, let's say, Gary, we're not able to start football until September, and so it just wipes out all of your endowment games. Well, the endowment games are wiped out because at that point, we are probably looking at adjusting the schedule anyway. We're probably looking at cutting the number of games for any sport. It could be volleyball, it could be soccer, whatever the case would be. We would be looking at making those adjustments. So I think to say that, well, the endowment game is the only one that could be affected, it could be just some non-conference games that are affected as well. And those non-conference games were never designated as an endowment game to start with.
Hey, how are you doing? It's good.
I'm doing good, Sam.
I was looking in your background. It looks like you haven't been staying home very much because it looks like you got like 4 shoe boxes back there. You've been going to Louis Vuitton.
No, Sam. Those are like collector boxes. I've got stuff in them.
Yeah, shoes. Question for you. I don't know how, where I'm at West Charlotte, how it's going to affect us. But like, say Myers Park, they might have 125 players. What would you recommend if you only have 2 fields? Are you thinking about staggered practice time, or what do you think about the 25-person rule?
Well, what we've said is that it is 25 persons per venue. So really and truly what we would hope would happen is that if they've got 2 fields, then obviously that gives them a little bit of an advantage. But those are the kinds of things that the AD would need to work with the coaches. I would hope that there would be a coaching staff meeting and the schedule would be staggered so that we don't have everyone arriving at the same time, so that maybe that if there are 2 fields, one of those fields probably is going to be used by soccer. If you've got lacrosse, and I don't know if you do or not, but there needs to be the sharing of space, and then everybody just needs to stagger their schedules because the maximum amount of time is 90 minutes. And we're suggesting that in these first couple of weeks that no student should participate in more than 1 session a day. And that's just to get them back into the swing of things, reacclimated, so to speak, before they start trying to do soccer and do football, example, or try to do volleyball, and if they happen to play tennis, something of those sorts, so that they're not doubling up. But the stagger is going to be very, very important.
Q, I want to see if we can shift gears just a little bit. Obviously, I know that the COVID-19 has dominated a lot of the discussions here in recent days. But I want to go back. I know that during the springtime, the NCHSAA body, the member schools, voted against the bylaw change, which could have changed the way the realignments look going forward. Now, with that being said, I know that there had been some possible other ways that you could do the realignment. Has the committee been able to meet, and is there any insight that you could give us to whether we could see some kind of a 5A, maybe not 5A by name, but a 4AA and a 4A or so on and so forth? Is there any updates towards the realignment that you could give us?
Well, obviously, the committee recommended to the board that we hit pause as it relates to just realignment in and of itself. The committee had met twice. The last meeting was the latter part of February. Came out of that meeting with some ideas and suggestions of some other criteria to look at and to use other than just ADM. The bylaw says that you realign using ADM number as a guiding principle, not the only thing. So they started looking at things, guys, such as, all right, maybe we ought to look at the success factor, and maybe everybody gets Wells Fargo points. So maybe we factor that in. So maybe we say that we're going to take the ADM number and it will count a certain percentage. You use maybe the Wells Fargo numbers and they'll count a certain percentage. Maybe you use a number that's called the ISP number, which is the individualized student percentage, which is used to help determine the free and reduced lunch situations for the schools across the state. So maybe we would assign a percentage to that criteria. And then you would come up with new numbers, and ultimately that would give you then what your realignment number would be. Each one of those criteria would be assigned a percentage. Maybe you look at an average of the Wells Fargo points, maybe a 3-year average, whatever the case would be. And that's what we would come up with in terms of the number we would use. Then there was talk about, well, what if we align the schools and we say any school that is from the ocean to a dividing line in the middle of the state? What if we take all of those schools and we realign them? We start with take that highest number, and then you would go down to the smallest and you realign that group. Then you take the rest of the schools from that dividing line to the mountains and you would align them so that it really wouldn't, it would move us away from, let's say, Currituck High School impacting what the realignment is going to be for Franklin High School in the mountains. So those were criteria. Nothing was ever decided. They looked at those, and really at the end of February, what they had said to our staff is, please give us some numbers, please show us some models, and when we come back, we'll try to see if any of this makes sense. Can we arrive at a place that we like? It didn't have anything to do with subdividing, Chris. It was just about, let's just change the way we maybe look at the criteria. And then let's see where we land. And then, of course, COVID-19 hit. And so our hope right now is, while we're paused, is that we hope that we'll be able to get to a point that we can bring the committee back so that they can look at the models that we have put together. If they don't like the percentage, maybe they don't like the percentage that is assigned to the Wells Fargo points. So let's change that, make it a smaller percentage, and let's increase this criteria. They felt like, and we agree, that it's hard to digest numbers if you're not sitting around the table, at least in the same room, and be able to bounce off ideas. So our hope is that by August sometime, we can get the committee together in person and look at that information. And then if everything works out, then we could use September, realign the September regional meetings and share where the committee lands. And then let the membership say, oh, that's a terrible idea. We like it. Yeah, let's move forward. We present it to the board. They could sign off on that plan sometime in October. And then that would get us right at the point where then we would start to look at numbers. But I think one of the things that will have to be factored into everything we do is that this year is going to start differently than any other year. You know, we use the first month's ADM numbers. We have no idea what those ADM numbers are going to look like. So would be that we need to even look at that bylaw to see how can we adjust that? And I think, we'd have to bring legal in if we start trying to say that we're going to do something different with the ADM numbers, and that would entail us bringing in the State Board of Education to take a look. But that's really where we are with the realignment process.
Well, Q, I just wanted to add this, and if I could stand up and applaud for you right now, I would, because that's probably the best answer I've heard, and I want to applaud the committee for even thinking outside the box, because, we can do the same things year in and year out like we've done, and we've all been around this sport for a long time, and we've seen so many realignments, and there's nothing wrong with looking at a different set of numbers, and there's nothing wrong with all of those different factors, and I just want to say for the record, I'm totally in support of how you explain that. I think that that's a great way to look at it, and I appreciate you for saying that.
Well, thank you very much. It is, it's the realignment just brings out, it just moves people to a whole different level in terms of their emotions and in terms of how they think and how they feel. And that was one of the reasons that, I even applaud our board to say, look, let's just stop and let's just use 1920 to look at the process. But we didn't have any way of knowing that pandemic was going to hit and we wouldn't be able to do everything we wanted to. But we will persevere and we'll plow through this, and hopefully we can get to a point where at least the membership is pleased with our effort.
Q, that was amazing. Me and Chris talk about the realignment all the time, and the way you broke it down, I was just like, wow, that was really good. Your IQ must be on a whole different level. So
no.
I'm gonna need your help on something, okay?
All
so
right.
When this virus completely goes away and we have a trivia night somewhere, we're gonna meet up, and I'm gonna need you on my team so that we can dominate trivia night. Is that
all
okay?
right? Sounds like a plan, Sam. Just let me know where.
Seriously, you're amazing.
All right, Q, I did a couple questions for you. We're hearing in Charlotte there's a referee shortage. Are you guys seeing that statewide, and does COVID have anything to do with that, where maybe referees or potential referees are a little more nervous than usual? Or is this the kind of thing we've just been seeing where we're just having fewer and fewer officials because of the violence, the ambivalence, that type of thing?
Well, I think it's been coming. We've had a campaign for the last couple of years just trying to recruit officials. We've reached out to our colleges and universities, just trying to tap into their intramural programs. We've reached out to our senior classes in our membership to remind these young people that once you graduate, and if you're not going to go on to college, or even if you are, and you find yourself with some free time, become an official. So we have known, not only in our state, but nationwide, the officiating shortage is real. Some of it does indeed have to do with just the lack of good sportsmanship on the part of spectators. And the spectator aspect has become increasingly more difficult really to handle, because these are fans who come to the window, they buy a ticket, and they think it gives them the right to say or to do whatever they want to. We've always had the issues that sometimes we have coaches who have those out-of-body experiences. We have athletes who have those out-of-body experiences, and we've been able to deal with those. But you throw in the spectators and the fans now, it has just added to what officials are having to deal with. And many of them are just simply saying, I don't need this, I don't have to do it. And some of it also has to do with the fact that many of our officials are at an age where they have been in officiating for a long time. They love it and have done a good job, but because it was becoming more hostile, they just decided, hey, I'm out of here. I'm retiring. I'm gone. And so all of those things just have come together over the last couple of years, and it has made it even more difficult for us here in North Carolina. Now, you throw in another factor, which is COVID-19. Some of those who were already thinking about retiring, and now they're coming back maybe in a situation where they have to wear a mask, or they're trying to think, how will I do this? I can't wear a mask and run up and down the field or up and down the floor or get behind a batter in that batter's box. It's hot back there. They maybe just will say, this is a good time to retire. And I think we have that going on. And the fact that younger people are not joining the mix, it makes it very difficult. I don't know if you guys realize this or not, but before we broke with the COVID situation, we had a major shortage of officiating of lacrosse officials for women in the Triangle area. And we were dealing with that, just about every day leading up to when we had to stop because of coronavirus. So it is real. It is very concerning. And if I thought I could figure out how to fix it and just get fans to do the right thing, I'd do it and be rich and wouldn't do anything else the rest of my life.
Very well said. I have a friend that's actually an official, or used to be, Boot. And the situation he tells me is that the younger population don't want to be officials because all you do is get ridiculed. No one's like, oh, you did a great job. Like, the best officiating is normally when you forget who they were, and nobody wants to be forgotten. And it's a tough profession to be in. I commend anybody that wants to be an official. And I think as coaches, players, we need to do a better job of appreciating what they're bringing to the table, because they're not like coming to the game and want to sabotage anything. They're people. They want to be involved in the game, and we might need to pay them more to get more people to get involved, to be honest with you.
Well, and you're right. But how about this? I had an email last week from somebody telling me that we should just reduce the officials' fees for this first semester coming up. And I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, we have a shortage. If we just then go out here and say, oh, we're going to reduce how much we pay you, that we really would have a shortage. So that just goes to show you that it's such a mixed, so many different opinions, mixed information. People do not understand it the way you just said it, Sam. And it's really tough. But I think one thing that would really help is if we could have coaches who would officiate before they become a head coach, or before they get into coaching. It would give them a renewed appreciation for officiating. When I started teaching and coaching in Marion, North Carolina, and when I made the move back to Reidsville, I wasn't the head basketball coach there. So a bunch of guys said, come on, you need to officiate. So I officiated for a year and a half before I was named the head basketball coach. And I'm telling you, it just changed everything about how I looked at the game of basketball, and then what I needed to be doing on the sideline, because I knew that I wasn't going to change the official's opinion the way he saw it or she saw it, because I had been there, done that. And it changes. And that may be something that we need to, not that we could require it, but it certainly would be, I think, an interesting concept for coaches to officiate before they become a head coach.
We might make more money that way.
I'm not going to touch that, Sam.
We've seen some of the NFL teams talk about maybe 20% fans in the stadium. So if we're talking in Charlotte, a lot of the stadiums are 4,000 seat. That'd be like 800 fans, 400 aside, 400 aside. Have you guys thought about anything like that if we get to playing football?
Well, again, if we get to play, that would certainly be a nice problem to have. I think the thing that scares us all, and especially those who are on the ground at the school level, is that we would play football and they couldn't have any fans in the stands. So I think if we could have some fans, that would certainly be a good problem. Now, how would the schools figure out who gets in on this Friday night as opposed to which group comes in the next Friday night? Obviously, those things would be decided at the local level. But here's where we will land on that. We will depend on the governor and his team, led by Dr. Mandy Cohen, to be able to help us know all of this. Once they come up with those numbers, they will share those with us, and we'll have to abide by them. And I love the fact that they have involved us and allowed us to be at the table to offer some opinions, and to at least they seek our advice. So don't know yet how it will look, Langston, but again, we just want to have the opportunity, I think, to be able to have some fans, or to at least discuss how can we do this. And I think if we get to that point, it will be an indication that perhaps we're closer to being able to have this virus in somewhere that we can at least address it. Until we have the vaccine, we're still in trouble, quote unquote. So I think, that's the key. We have to have a vaccine. And until we can have the vaccine, we have to do everything we can. And I think we just have to fit inside of that box and just make those adjustments.
Okay, but last question before we let you go. You were on a couple months ago, kind of when we started talking about these issues, and I asked you to look in your crystal ball. Remember?
Yes, I do.
Tell me, what do you see about football in August? You said it's cloudy. We're in June now. What does that crystal ball look like in June?
Well, I think it's still cloudy. I think what I see really is the governor and the State Board of Education, Department of Public Instruction, they released their set of guidelines for reopening schools. That was released today. And when you look at that document and you look at the things that are going to be required of our teachers and our administrators just to start school August 17th, to throw in athletics into the mix, I don't know how it's all going to work. If my crystal ball, it is still cloudy, but I could envision something that would indicate we can't start doing anything August 1, that we could start something later, maybe once we get school started, once we're able to figure out how to make everything that educators have to do just to do in-person learning. Once we get that in place, then maybe we can come and say, let's do athletics now. Now that we've figured out this part, let's bring the athletic folk in, and now we know how we can put them on the bus, because we've already had them on the bus arriving to school. So now we know what we need to do to get them from point A to point B to play a game. We know how we can get enough masks. We all those things that they will be dealing with just to start school August 17th. So my crystal ball is still cloudy, but I see that there maybe is a way, but it may not be the timeline that everybody wants. And everybody wants us to start August 1, but to be honest with you, I don't know that that's real.
Okay. Well, Ms. Tucker, I appreciate you last minute jumping on the phone with us and putting up with this again. And hopefully you'll join us later on in the year. Hopefully we didn't make you too mad. And I think you're doing a great job. As Chris said, I want to second that. I mean, I think you're doing an amazing job through a very tough time. So thanks for getting on with us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
All right.
Thank you.
That's Q Tucker, the commissioner of the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. Guys, had a long show today. We had two guests, had a surprise guest. I don't want to keep you guys on much longer. Just what are your thoughts hearing what she said just then, Chris, about a potential for the season to start later? Because all those phenomenal games we got in Charlotte, I'm like, well, that's not going to happen, and that's not going to happen, and that's not going to happen. What do you think?
That was the first thing that I thought of when she said that it's most likely that we would not get to play the games and do the practices beginning August 1st. And I immediately thought about the Dutch Fork games, and, the big games at Bank of America Stadium. Ultimately, and, we all want to see sports. I know all of us on this panel want to. But again, I think you got to put your parent cap, you got to put your common sense cap on, and you got to do the right thing by all the stakeholders. And I don't mean the parents or the fans or the students, but just everybody collectively as a whole. You just got to do the right thing to protect everyone. And while I don't have to like it, I think it is the reality that we're living in.
Gary, you're a teacher, been a teacher for years and years. I mean, what are your thoughts on what she said, and how could you envision us opening schools in this environment?
Well, she mentioned that the governor came out with his suggestions about opening school, and I think he had 3. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of this is going to be dictated over the data over the next month. They've always said it's going to be a second wave. I think the data is going to determine how schools open, and then what type of schedule the schools are on. Is it an abbreviated schedule? Is it a virtual schedule? Is it an alternated schedule? I think all of that's going to be dictated by the next couple of weeks. Also, I think we're going to learn a lot for high schools by how the colleges open up. Okay, how they return and the data that they're facing. Because what we're starting to see is a lot of these young people are asymptomatic. Auburn had 3 players that test positive. Alabama, I think, had 5, and they never knew it because they didn't exhibit any symptoms. And I think that's probably true with a lot of young people after all of these marches and protests. The data is probably going to change. And so I think we're going to find more about high school based on how the pros and colleges transition into their season. And that will tell us a lot about how the high school should transition it.
Dale, looking at your Facebook, I know you follow COVID very, very closely. You put up a lot of stats and statistics, and I suggest people go follow you on Facebook. But Q's crystal ball is cloudy. Mecklenburg County in a week has had 1,000 more cases and like 30 more deaths. What does your crystal ball say about August?
That's hard to say. Just, looking at data, it's just one of those things that's hard for us to call. At some point, we still have to move forward. So no, the big thing is North Carolina is going through a spike right now. Or shouldn't call it a spike, but an increase in numbers across the state. For me, from what I heard Q say, and it really kind of resonated strongly with me, is that let's assume we can start school normally. Now, one of the things is schools across the state start at different times. And, how is that going to play into rolling kids or rolling the athletics in? But if you really think about it, there's a lot that's got to be done to add athletics into that mix, because I'm sure at that top level, it's just about getting kids back to getting educated, and athletics is taking a second phase to all that. So to me, I'm going to be shocked to see football in early September. I hope that's wrong, right?
So Chris, you think is September 1, September, middle of September? Not at all?
I don't want to say not at all. Now, I have past 2 or 3 days, I've had a few conversations with a few coaches, an AD or two, all across North Carolina, and the info that I've gotten from them is not optimistic. And I listened to Dale speak, and Dale's right. You got to look at the numbers, and I'm concerned that I don't know. I don't want to be a pessimist, but I'm starting to lack optimism. But I think maybe middle of September.
Wow. All right, Mr. Grinder, you get the final word. You're a football coach. I know you want to play as much or more than anybody. What does your crystal ball tell you about high school football in August or September or October?
Hopefully we play in August. That's where football starts. The only problem, like what Gary's talking about, was looking at colleges. Most colleges start in September. You don't see games until later on. So if we're watching what they're doing, then obviously we'll be behind them. Then that won't be good. Normally we start in front of them. Like I said, you got to be a big believer in faith. You pray about situations, and I'm praying that we get to play football because, I think the good Lord only watches football, to be honest with you. But
there you go. I'm a basketball dude, right?
Yeah. So we're going to play in August. That's what I'm saying.
All right, guys. Look, it was a great show this week. Coach, who we got coming on next week, Coach?
Will Muschamp.
There you go. South Carolina Will Muschamp. Go Gamecocks.
You're talking about a funny guy. Wait till this guy comes on.
We had a great show this week, guys. Appreciate y'all being on. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll talk to you.
You still want to talk,